You've been told that healing turns you into a gentle, peaceful soul. Carl Jung's research reveals a far more shocking truth. What a healed empath becomes will dismantle everything you thought you knew. They don't become more agreeable. They become a formidable force. Not a threat to the innocent, but a psychological nightmare for anyone who ever tried to exploit them. Let me walk you through what Jung identified as one of the most radical shifts a person can undergo. When an empath integrates their shadow and moves from a wounded healer to a conscious being, they don't just improve, they become unassailable. And that's precisely what keeps manipulators wide awake. To grasp what they become, you must see what they were. An unhealed empath functions as a psychological sponge, soaking up blow after blow for others while wearing itself to nothing. For years, you took in everyone's emotional turmoil. A parent's anger, a partner's hidden betrayal, a friend's envy disguised as care. You felt it all not by choice, but because your system was wired to detect every signal. Jung termed this unconscious entanglement. You weren't just managing your own feelings. You were hauling the hidden baggage of everyone near you. Their repressed rage, their silent hurts, their unresolved wounds. It all flowed into you as if you were a universal vessel for human pain. The greatest injury wasn't the suffering itself. It was believing this was your duty. You thought your depth of feeling meant you were destined to repair others, rescue others, be a container for others. You crafted your whole self around being the one who could endure what others wouldn't, the ever-present listener, the emotional decoder. But a critical fact was withheld. While you were consuming others' shadows, you neglected your own. You had no borders because borders felt unkind. You had no off-ramp because limits seemed self-centered. You agreed when you meant no. You grinned when you wanted to cry out. You remained when your whole being pleaded to leave. And gradually, so subtly you missed it, you vanished. The authentic you, submerged beneath straight of other people's unfelt emotions. Jung witnessed this cycle repeatedly. These individuals sought his counsel not due to illness, but because they were suffocating in an ocean of awareness that wasn't their own. Reflect on a patient archetype from Jung's notes, a blend of traits he saw in many. This person, an introverted, intuitive type, entered a space and instantly read the psychological climate. Who was deceitful? Who was hurting? Who held bitterness? But this capacity didn't bring calm. It brought depletion. They couldn't manage trivial chatter because they perceived every mask. They struggled to keep friends because others felt seen through. Jung understood he wasn't healing a disorder. He was witnessing what occurs when the unconscious grows too aware. When insight becomes too sharp for ordinary social life. This loop defines the empath's path. The skill to perceive everything becomes the very thing that severs you from everyone. Then a shift occurs. A change that alters everything. Jung named it the turning point. But that phrase fails to capture the event. It's not a collapse. It's a revelation masked as ruin. Typically, it's a profound betrayal. The kind that finally brings lucidity. The individual you trusted most, shielded most, suffered for, shows their true face. Perhaps you find years of deception. Perhaps you witness them harming you while smiling. Perhaps you understand they never viewed you as human, just a supply to exhaust. In that instant, something within you doesn't shatter. It ignites. Because here is Jung's pivotal discovery that reshapes this entire metamorphosis. That crisis isn't when the empath loses their sanity. It's when they finally believe it. You see, all those years spent absorbing emotions, you were also engaged in another task. You were analyzing, recording, charting human conduct with a strategist's exactness. Every slight facial shift, every change in voice, every mismatch between words and vibe, you noticed it. You comprehended it. You simply never applied it. We observe this clearly in the transformation stories Jung tracked. The awakening moment doesn't arrive with celebration. It arrives as icy certainty. The empath who spent ages questioning their instincts suddenly stops questioning. The inner certainty they muted for years to maintain harmony grows louder than any external voice. The healed empath rises from this event as what Jung described as psychologically whole. They've assimilated their shadow. And that shadow isn't wicked. It's every trait they were instructed to silence. Their discernment, their righteous anger, their power to decline. their readiness to let others stumble, their ability to exit without excuse, their gift for spotting manipulation instantly. When these pieces merge, when the empath finally claims every fragment of themselves, three clear phases unfold. Phase 1, the reflection. The healed empath ceases absorbing your feelings and begins showing them back to you. They're no longer a sponge. They're a mirror, and not a flattering one. The kind that displays your exact reality. Picture the scenario. Imagine a narcissist accustomed to using empaths as emotional resources. You make a cutting remark. They soak it up. You project your flaws. They assume the blame. This always succeeded. Then you meet a healed empath. Suddenly, nothing works. You attempt your standard plays. The pity ploy, the reality twisting, the veiled insult. Instead of absorbing it, they simply observe you, truly see you. And in that look, you encounter yourself. Not your crafted persona, but the actual you, the insecure, calculating, manipulative self you've hidden. It's chilling because the healed empath isn't condemning you. They're not furious. They're merely presenting the reflection, and you cannot bear the sight. So, you do what all unawakened people do when faced with their image. You assault the mirror. You label them heartless, self-absorbed, difficult, changed. And they simply smile because they recognize this playbook. They authored it. The reflection dismantles manipulators because it steals their prime tool, your tendency to mistrust your own sight. The healed empath believes what they perceive entirely, and that unwavering certainty is poison to anyone aiming to warp reality. Jung recorded this repeatedly. When empaths ceased doubting their intuition, they grew immune to the tactics that once governed them. The gaslighter's influence vanishes when their target no longer questions reality. The guilt tripper fails when their victim refuses to shoulder borrowed shame. Phase 2, deliberate compassion. This phase puzzles people most because they anticipate the healed empath will either stay universally open or shut down entirely. But that's not the outcome. The outcome is they become the curator. The unhealed empath was an unlocked gate. Anyone could enter. Any feeling, any plea, any disaster. The gate stayed open because closing it felt incorrect. The healed empath transforms that gate into something new, an entrance with a sentry. And that sentry is merciless about one thing, their vitality. Here, deliberate compassion appears. The healed empath remains capable of immense understanding, deep connection, and holding space for agony. But now they decide. They decide who earns entry to their gifts. They decide which fights merit their energy. They decide when to connect and when to depart. And they make these choices without shame, without lengthy justification, without needing anyone's approval. To those who earn their trust, who act with honor, who respect limits, the healed empath is a sanctuary, secure, restorative, deeply attentive. But to manipulators, energy drains, and those refusing inner work, the healed empath becomes a citadel, unbreachable, unaffected by insincere tears, unmoved by rage meant to control, unswayed by tales crafted to extract pity. This move from pleasant to genuine is vital. Pleasant is about evading conflict, keeping up images, prioritizing others' comfort over your own. Genuine is about doing what's truly right, even when it's hard. The healed empath stops being pleasant, but they become deeply genuine. Genuine enough to let people face their own results. Genuine enough to refuse to support dysfunction. Genuine enough to say no without regret. What makes this phase so potent is that the healed empath of selectivity isn't rooted in criticism. It's rooted in something more advanced. Pattern recognition. They've observed how certain personalities function. They know the arc of relationships built on control. They can foresee endings because they've watched these same cycles repeat. The healed empath doesn't need months to discern someone's authenticity. They know within 3 exchanges. Not through magic, through data, through the subconscious archive they've compiled their entire life. This leads to phase 3, tactical foresight. This is a phase that would alarm you if you grasped its full meaning. Because the healed empath possesses an ability most never cultivate. They became a human truth detector, not through mysticism, but through necessity. Consider what happens when you spend years in survival mode, when your safety depends on accurately reading an environment, when overlooking a subtle cue could mean tranquility or turmoil, when you had to master human behavior just to exist in your own home. Your mind doesn't just cultivate empathy, it builds a library. Jung saw this constantly. His empath patients could forecast behaviors with remarkable accuracy, not because they were prophetic, but because they'd spent lifetimes unconsciously running pattern analysis software beyond compare. Every encounter was a data point. Every discussion was intelligence. Every bond was a lesson in human nature. The unhealed empath gathered this intel, but felt ashamed to use it. They questioned their gut, called themselves judgmental when alarms sounded, overrode their internal alerts because it seemed nicer, more spiritual. But the healed empath trusts that library completely. When their entire being signals that someone is dishonest, they don't require proof. They already know and they respond. Every micro-expression that foreshadowed an explosion, every speech pattern that indicated deceit, every behavioral chain that led to betrayal. You archived it all. Now, after integration, after the awakening, you have full access to that library. You see the play before the first move. Someone sits with a grin, and within half a minute, you know they're lying about last night. You know they're about to request a loan they won't repay. You know they're orchestrating a manipulation several steps ahead. You don't know because you're psychic. You know because you've witnessed this precise sequence countless times. The micro-expressions never deceive. The energy never deceives. The behavioral chains never deceive. This is Jung's differentiated perception. The healed empath doesn't just feel more. They process emotional and psychological information on a plane most never attain. They operate with framework forged in pain, now functioning as an instinct. And here's the twist that makes this truly formidable. The healed empath comprehends the mechanics of control perfectly. They can outmanipulate any narcissist. They know precisely which levers to pull, which scars to prod, which fears to trigger. They possess the blueprint. They have the expertise. They have the insight, but they elect not to employ it destructively. Jung studied why some empaths channeled this power for good, while others weaponized it. He found the difference lay in one thing: conscious decision. The healed empath who keeps their integrity makes a daily choice to wield their gifts wisely. They see the easy paths. They know how simple it would be to manipulate their way through existence. They recognize their grasp of psychology grants them superior advantages in nearly every interaction, yet they decline to take them, not from weakness, but from strength. The strength to pick a harder road, to win without deceit, to influence without controlling. This restraint, this conscious choice to be ethical when being unethical would be easier, is what Jung named moral courage. It's simple to be good when you lack the potential for harm. It requires a different caliber of development to have the capacity for manipulation and choose honesty instead. This is Jung's individuated person, the one who has merged both light and shadow, who holds the potential for deep tenderness and fierce accuracy, who can be soft or stern as the moment demands. The healed empath becomes what some call a disciplined power, someone capable of great impact who chooses benevolence. This choice separates the healed empath from the manipulator. Both see the game. Both grasp the mechanics. Both could win at psychological chess. But the healed empath plays a different game entirely. They aren't seeking to control you. They're guarding their own peace. And that renders them far more potent than any would-be dominator. Because when you're not attached to controlling outcomes, when you're not invested in changing unwilling people, when you're perfectly willing to walk from anything that disrupts your serenity, you become invulnerable. Invulnerable to guilt, to manipulation, to the chaos that once overwhelmed you. The manipulator needs your reaction. The healed empath needs nothing from you. And that imbalance of need is where true power resides. Now, here's the culmination. The moment when everyone around the healed empath must choose. Because the healed empath's new existence creates waves that force every relationship to evolve or expose itself. Family systems that operated on enabling suddenly falter. Not because the healed empath is attacking, but because they stop being the support beam holding up a broken structure. When you remove the person who always absorbed the stress, who always made peace, who always sacrificed to preserve false calm, the entire system must change. That change is brutal for those who profited from the dysfunction. Your addicted parent can no longer spiral while you manage the fallout. Your enmeshed mother can no longer use you as her counselor while avoiding real help. Your self-absorbed ex can no longer sway you with old guilt. Your draining friend can no longer deposit their endless drama at your feet. The empath who enabled this is gone. In their place stands someone who values themselves more than false harmony. Some people rise. They see the transformation and feel motivated. They begin their own inner work. They honor the new boundaries. They value the realness. These bonds deepen, becoming truer than ever, but others expose their core. They intensify. They erupt. They claim victimhood. They rally others to blame the healed empath. Because if the healed empath is at fault, they needn't evolve. This is where the healed empath's real strength appears. They don't fight back. They don't rationalize. They don't plead for validation. They merely watch. They observe people reveal themselves through their responses, and they decide accordingly. Not with fury, not with resentment, with lucidity. This is conscious engagement. The healed empath interacts with reality as it is, not as they desire it to be. They see people plainly. They accept people as they are, and they choose connections based on that clear vision. No more potential. No more hoping for change. No more sacrificing for bonds that drain rather than fill. The healed empath becomes capable of profound love because they no longer fear profound loss. They can release anyone who doesn't resonate with their truth. That liberty makes them magnetic to the healthy and repellent to the toxic. Jung wrote of this as psychological transmutation, the evolution of the wounded healer into the sage, the person who journeyed into darkness, integrated the findings, and emerged with abilities to guide others by modeling wholeness. Because here is Jung's ultimate revelation. The healed empath's supreme gift isn't pain absorption. It's living evidence that integration is achievable, that you can feel deeply and still have limits, that you can witness humanity's worst and still choose kindness, that you can be powerful and peaceful simultaneously. Your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was a latent strength awaiting activation. Every painful moment, every betrayal. You were collecting information, honing abilities, developing the capacities required to become psychologically inviolable. The aim was never to feel less. It was to feel with conscious intent, to strategically unite that empathic sense with wisdom and self-trust, to evolve from an emotional sponge into a conscious force. This is Jung's individuation, the process of becoming entire, not flawless, not impervious, but complete. Someone who possesses every part, the light and the dark, the gentleness and the resolve, the compassion and the capacity to sever ties without delay. You are not excessive for this world. You are precisely what conscious evolution needs. A person who can contain darkness without being swallowed, who can love fully without dissolving, who can see past illusions while retaining hope. The unhealed empath asks, "Why is this my lot?" The healed empath understands. It was to craft you into something remarkable, someone who cannot be controlled, guilt, or pulled back into dysfunction. You were never meant to save everyone. You were meant to save yourself. In doing so, you become a blueprint for integrated empathy. Not martyrdom, not self-loss, but conscious choice, strategic kindness, empathy with discretion. This is a metamorphosis Jung recorded, but most misinterpret. They think healing means reverting to who you were before the hurt. But you can't go back. That version was asleep. The healed version is vastly more potent. You're conscious, awakened, integrated, and that completeness makes you dangerous. Not to good people, but to anyone who confuses your kindness for frailty. To anyone who thinks your empathy means you're easily led. To anyone believing they can use you. Those individuals face a startling realization. Because the healed empath doesn't quarrel, doesn't justify, doesn't demonstrate. They simply smile, perceive the game, and choose. Often, that choice is to depart, so silently the click of the door is almost inaudible. No spectacle, no lecture, simply absent. This is what a healed empath truly becomes. Not more agreeable, not more pliable, not more accommodating. They become autonomous, self-contained, steadfast in their knowing, immovable in their limits, inaccessible to anyone playing unconscious games. They become love with a spine, compassion with judgment, empathy with self-regard. That combination stands as one of humanity's most potent psychological forces. The healed empath knows a truth that took years to learn. That guarding your peace isn't selfish. It's holy. That leaving toxicity isn't surrender. It's ascension. That choosing yourself isn't cruel. It's essential. And when you finally make that choice, when you decide your well-being outweighs others' convenience, a transfer occurs. The people who depleted you begin to avoid you. The scenarios that exhausted you cease to find you. The drama that once trailed you suddenly cannot locate you. Not because you're concealed, because you've shifted frequencies. You're operating on a level where unconscious behavior cannot touch you, where manipulation deflects like rain off rock, where guilt trips land in void space, because you're no longer standing in the impact zone. This is the true might of the healed empath. Not the power to feel all, but the wisdom to select what merits feeling. Not the call to aid all, but the judgment to invest in those doing their work. Not the virtue of infinite patience, but the fortitude to leave when patience enables harm. If you see yourself in this journey, declare below, "Right, I am awake." Let those words be your testament, your recognition that you've crossed over from wounded to empowered, from unconscious to whole, from victim to sovereign. Please like this video if it resonated. It truly supports this channel, Winds of Thought. Subscribe for more explorations into Jungian wisdom and the awakening of consciousness. This space exists for individuals like you, people who feel profoundly, who see clearly, who are becoming all they are destined to be. Your breaking point was your entrance. Your sensitivity is your advantage. Your empathy is your instrument. And now that you know how to wield it with awareness, you are unstoppable.